and get started. First off, a huge thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. Welcome to Maccabee's first workshop of 2022 and our Sharper Angles series. My name is Christine Scherping, and I am the Senior Vice President here at Maccabee Agency. This afternoon, we're excited to share with you actionable tips on how to successfully set up your brands for social media success in 2022, as well as beyond. During this 45-minute session, you'll hear directly from our expert panelists, Aaron and Christina, followed by a Q&A. A note that we will be recording today's session, and a link to the recording will be shared in our follow-up email to each of you. A housekeeping note, if you have any questions, please submit them into the chat function and we will make sure to address them. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our two panelists this afternoon. We're going to give each of them a couple of minutes to give an overview of themselves and what they do for their current company. And first, I'd like to introduce Aaron Como, who is the Brand Senior Manager of Social and Community for Noom.
Thanks, Christine. Hello, everyone. I am so happy to be here. This is maybe too much information, but I'm fresh from my home in Hawaii, where it's a lot warmer there. And so I'm channeling some like aloha print vibes so that wherever you are, it's like in the single digits here. So hopefully you're feeling some warmth coming out of the screen. But currently, I'm a senior brand manager at Noom, leading social and community. Prior to that, I was a campaign manager over at The Bullseye, Target. And prior to that, I spent a few years over at Carmichael Lynch, an integrated agency, on their social team. So really have a mix of background on both the agency and client side. At this point, I can't escape social. I just love it too much. So I continue to just find new and great opportunities within the space. And so thankful for this time to share it with you. And thanks to Maccabee for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And our second panelist is Christina Malinowski, who is the Associate Director of Social Media for Lifetime.
Hello, everybody. I'm Christina. Don't get confused by Christine and Christina on the call today. But yes, I am Associate Director of Social Media at Lifetime, overseeing an organic social media team. Joined 1 year ago, just about today. And before that, I worked at Regis Corporation, leading social media for brands like Supercuts, Smart Style Hair Salons, and Walmart, Cost Cutters locally. And then before that, I had 8 great years at Maccabee Public Relations, which is an agency I think most people on the call might be familiar with, coordinating today's great call. Thank you for having me, Paul, Christine, and team. Really happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, we're so excited to have both you and Aaron here with us today. We have a lot of really good questions that we've discussed over the past month or so. And, as a reminder to the audience today, please drop in any questions into the chat function. We would love to hear from you. So Christina, we'll start with you first. You have been working in and around different social media platforms throughout your career. In fact, you had mentioned that when you started your career, Twitter was just up and coming. Can you share your thoughts in terms of how social media has evolved or not throughout the years?
Well, the one constant in social is that it changes, which is the reason I'm still here working in social media. I think it's an amazing career path now here in 2022. I started in 2006, like you noted, the same year that Twitter was founded. So my first job out of college, I launched our Twitter and LinkedIn channels. I grew up at Maccabee helping clients really understand Facebook, foodie bloggers, and what was this new channel, Instagram. And now at Regis and now at Lifetime, Instagram is the #1, and we've got a new social channel on the horizon. It's here actually, TikTok. Studies are showing that we're about to hit 1.5 billion monthly users of TikTok. So it is a channel that is not going away. I think what's most exciting for me in the evolution of social is that social media is a shiny object. It's fun. Every day is different, but it provides business results. there are KPIs that a business can have from social media to drive the business. And so I think that we can talk about that here today, but it's not just a fad, it's not going away. And it's important for every branded business to have a social media strategy.
Absolutely love it. Erin would also love to hear from you in terms of your thoughts. Call today. If you can please make sure to mute yourselves. Erin, we would love to hear your point of view on that question as well.
Absolutely. I mean, echo everything that Christina had to say. I think, putting it shortly, I think there was a time initially in social media where it's very much me as the user sharing out to my community. It was somewhat sort of one to many. And as brands began to come onto these spaces, similarly, it was sort of their products going out to their followers, their community. I think in 2022, I had to catch myself there. It's not just sort of one to many, it's sort of many to many. When we think about the brand and the different teams or their partners or brand partners, when you go to a brand's profile, let's call it an Instagram, you're maybe not just seeing the representation of that brand and that singular business itself. It's now at a point where there's a lot of co-creation going on, a lot of sort of cross-sharing, and it's sort of a many to many now, really expanding that idea of what a social network could be.
Fantastic, thank you. Pop culture has had a huge impact on brands in the social media space. I think almost everyone on this call can remember the iconic Oreo moment that took place at the Super Bowl years ago. But, even more so, pop culture trends influence us on a very regular basis. So Erin, let's start with you. What pop culture trends can brands tap into to create engaging content?
Yeah, that's a great question. Your Oreo reference actually made me think of one other that we didn't talk about. So I'll throw in a surprise. But when I think about it in terms of maybe micro and macro, I'm sure we all have these for us, right? So feel free to drop yours in the chat. But some of the micro trends giving me some energy lately is I love the CDC memes. It's very specific, but I love all of them of the new thing that the CDC recommends. I also really enjoy watching the videos that are of the POV of, right? We sort of saw trends of how it started, how it's going, or tell me X, Y, and Z without telling me X, Y, and Z. I think POV is also a nice extension of that sort of storytelling. Christine, your Oreo reference made me think of what Peloton seems to always go through year over year. About one of their characters. I guess maybe there are spoilers here. Not sure if you're watching the Sex and the City reboot, but they got themselves in a little bit of a thing. A character may or may not have died because of their equipment. They then come out with an ad featuring that actor, and then the actor themselves is in a scandal in his own right. And so I think that's also an interesting thing to your point around how it's really integrated with pop culture. From a macro sense, and this is sort of alluded to my initial comment, I think co-creation is something that is not going away, and I'm seeing it sort of exponentially grow, right? We see the platforms like a TikTok or an Instagram build the capabilities within the platforms themselves to allow you to duet, to allow you to take someone's comment into your content and be able to react to that. There's a lot of, cross-brand collaboration, a lot of, influencer partnerships. So as you begin to grow your business as a brand within social, just know again that you're gonna need to maybe loosen the grip a bit on your sort of brand best practices or your brand guidelines, because you are gonna need to bring in some partners to help with that co-creation. The other macro trend I would say is content that's data informed, and that's both from what a brand puts out in their feeds, but then also what a brand gives to their community to share and propagate themselves. An example that I have is here at Noom, or here from my home in Noom, we're really leveraging some of our Noomer data, right, to share some of the things that they have accomplished and what they're logging to really add value to the greater Noomer community. Many times brands wonder, how can I make something unique to our brand or unique to me? How can something be ownable? And at this point, trends, there are so many different takes on them, but a really great way to make it ownable and unique to your brand is look at the first party data that you have, and I'm not talking about it in like a scary, creepy data privacy way. Look at the data that's anonymized and what story can you tell that really adds value. Another example is a Spotify, right? Everyone's sharing their Unwrapped. That's a good version of giving the data over to the user and allowing them to propagate it.
But in somehow, right, Aaron, not doing it in a creepy way. Because
exactly,
as social
they
media
made
marketers,
it fun and sexy, yes.
We have access to a lot of data as marketers, and they did it in just the right way for social media.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Christina, anything to add in terms of like pop culture trends, how brands can either tap into it or when they should maybe avoid being part of it?
Ooh, well, avoid, I think you always come back to, does this make sense for our brand? Bernie Sanders is an example of a trending meme from last year, and a lot of brands jumped on it, but he's a political figure and maybe that doesn't jive with your audience. So just thinking through a brand lens. But pop culture, I think, can be a really amazing and is a really amazing use of social media. An example from our team, I know Juliana is on the call here. Everyone say hi to G. Hi, G. Earlier last year, you may have seen this, hopefully you saw the Lifetime version of it, but the actor Will Smith was just coming out of quarantine. He was hitting the gym for the first time, and he made this hilarious reels of him walking through a gym and using all the machines the wrong way. And so once we saw that trending, G on our team, quickly we reached out to someone, one of our very influential on social media personal trainers. We know he's social media savvy. He jumped out to one of our clubs and we were able to use the Instagram remix feature, and he was showing how to appropriately use all the machines with Will Smith. And it was just a hilarious reels for us that actually turned out to be the second most popular post of the whole year. And what's really fun about it is it's trending, people get it, you're getting back to the gym, but it's difficult, but it's fun. And it's showing our expertise too in a non-preachy kind of way. So that was just a moment that was super fun for us. But it's always going through the lens of why should your brand do it or not? And making sure that it syncs up with your mission, vision, and values. I think one other thing, just the pop culture trend that I'm noticing, and Jen in the chat asked, can you talk a bit more about the role of video in brand content? I think professionally shot versus contributor material is going to be a nut to crack for social media in 2022 and beyond, because I think a lot of brands have the feeling, let's use really pretty, perfect photography and video because it works in other channels. It shows an elevated brand. Well, that doesn't always work on social media. And in fact, the UGC and the very raw footage, that's what works. Our most popular post of 2021 was a little bit of a rough video cut of one of our members. She was trying to excel at a box jump, and it showed clips of her trying to do the box jump and failing and failing and failing and finally sticking it and landing it. We saw this member post the reel to her account. Damon from the Shark Tank shared it. Women's Health was sharing this member's own video, and we got permission to share it on our channel. And it's just inspiring and authentic and relatable in a way that branded content can't be. So I think a pop culture or a trend that we will continue to see is using authentic content and showing a person instead of a model, or an actual like moment where that it inspires you or is relatable in a way that perfect content can't always be. And that's something we see on TikTok too, right? You're looking at a person, there you've got a person on TikTok and Reels, and you just feel like there's this social edge of social media, and this is it.
No, that's a fantastic example, Christina. Thank you so much for sharing. And both of you have mentioned leveraging either UGC or working with content creators. So while we're on the topic, can you tell us a little bit more about, how you work with influencers or content creators on behalf of the brands you currently are with or have in the past?
You want to go first, Aaron?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to, as I said, sort of opening up the sort of content pipeline to welcome and be inclusive of creators, I think a few things to really keep in mind as your brand in the business is offering very clear direction. Still allowing creators and influencers to be as authentic to themselves within their sort of style is definitely up to their artistic freedom. But I would really, task you when you think about that brief, make it as simple as possible. I know it's hard, but if you can drill down to a singular message, that's also most effective. Many times where it falls flat is you try to give them a tagline, you try to give them a mix of products, you try to give them a special moment that they need to, integrate with. And many times if you say, hey, here's the ask, here's the brief in one line, and you allow their creativity to take it where it needs to be, then I really, challenge you to take more of a, what's a business critical feedback like that I can offer, and what's really just creative freedom that I can give to them, as long as it's, brand safety is what we're really trying to protect when we're opening it up to creators.
I agree with that. Christine, what was the original question? Just so I'm answering it.
Oh, no, absolutely. How do you work with content creators or influencers successfully, or how you integrate them into your social plans?
Perfect. Yeah, I absolutely completely agree, Aaron, that there's a reason that the social media influencer has the influence they do. They know their audience, they know what content performs, and they know what's going to work best for your brand to their audience. So you absolutely need to trust that their branded content, the co-branded content will need to work for both parties. I think for us at Lifetime, we have partnered with some members, some traditional social media influencers, and it's been great. But one thing that we're really focused on this year is unlocking the power of our team members who may have social media influence as well. Our team members are in our clubs every single day, working with our members and living our brand. And if they can additionally post on social media and gain influence there, then that is going to help the whole brand have a wider reach and help us to reach new audiences, retain customers. Members who love their group fitness instructor stay. So if they can follow them on social media, awesome. And people love to follow people. We are lucky at Lifetime to have lots of followers on our social accounts, but we know the power that following a person has, and that is a team member, could be an influencer, or our members. So it's something that will fully be on our radar and is on our radar for the new year. I have a stat here that influencer marketing, I wish I had something to give away because I don't even think I would have guessed this. The influencer industry is valued at $15 billion. This is an industry that's not going away, and it's one that all brands on this call should be thinking about. It also involves working with your legal team. There are do's and don'ts and FTC considerations, and hit me up, direct message me if you want any intel on that. It's not sexy, but it's really important too. It's not as easy as just finding someone and giving them some money. It's a whole art and a science, and it's really fun.
I love that. Some great examples from both of you. Jumping into some other strategies, thinking about both paid and organic social, can you share some of your top strategies any and all brands should be doing right now as it relates to paid and organic social? Aaron, if you don't mind starting first.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah. So for me, I would say the top 3 strategies as you're building your presence or maybe sort of reinvesting in it. I would say content, community, and then paid. But really that has, that relates to organic and paid, all 3 of them do. So I would say when it comes to a content strategy, really have a strong foundation of sort of the different objectives of your content and the sort of overall objective and mission that you want it to do for you. Obviously paid and organic comes into that space because there are certain messages and certain content that you'll want to put out there that you maybe want to have more targeted into your broader community. So also, you know, when you optimize the content, that's also where different considerations come into play, whether it's intended for paid or organic. I would say a community strategy is very key for social. Going back to how social started, it really was about garnering a following. And as we've been talking a lot about letting people in to sort of participate and include it in your brand, community strategies are really going to be important for you, because social should be an interaction. It should be a give and take, and they should have a place in your strategy. And when it comes to paid specifically, you know, gone are the days where your post would be seen by all of your followers. And I'm sure you've probably heard that said before. And so
I miss those days, Erin. I miss those days.
Exactly. So that just means, you know, you are going to need to invest even just a little bit. That's the nice thing about social, is that the budgets are scalable and you can start small to see what works. When it comes to paid versus organic, what I would say is, you know, we're talking a lot about content today. And if you are investing in content, you should also be investing in making sure that that content has eyeballs on it, right? So find that weight that makes sense for you. You know, typically you hear that 20-80 ratio, spending 20% of your budget on production, 80% on paid media. That's just something to start, find what works for you. And again, the nice thing is that you can test and learn and optimize.
Love those. I feel like some of mine integrate with those, so I'm going to try to distinguish them a little bit. But all great strategies. And I see a question about B2B brands in chat. I think one strategy for every brand in 2022, think about where your fans or your customers are. For a B2B brand, that might be LinkedIn and might not be TikTok. But that's not true either. I've heard farmers are on TikTok, and there are whole communities of people who are using channels in different ways. So I would just focus really with who is your target audience and what channels might they be on. Pew Research has some really good studies about demographics, age, household income, gender, things that can help you narrow that down by social channel. For us, we know that Instagram is where our audience is, so we're going to continue to invest there. But TikTok, we launched it last year, we've posted to it, but it's not going away. And our members and our team members are eating up that content. So we'll be spending a lot of time there. Engage, like Erin said, social media is a two-way street. We're here on social media, both as a brand and as consumers, to engage. And it's not a one-way street. One thing that we think a lot about at Lifetime right now is social media is not a message distribution channel for us. There's other marketing and communications channels that we can reach our members if we have some message to get to them. But social media has this opportunity to inspire and educate and show off experiences about the Lifetime brand that no other marketing and communications channel has. So we're focusing a lot on show, don't tell, showing, inspiring, and having really awesome content that resonates and ultimately strikes up engagement with our audience. Community management isn't going away either, for better or for worse, but we have amazing fans, super fans of Lifetime. If you're a Lifetime member, you love Lifetime, and we are there to engage with you with every Instagram story or comment or DM you have. So that's a big focus for us too, is just engaging with our members on social media.
Wonderful examples. So besides Noom and Lifetime, which both do really well on your priority social platforms, what are some other brands you have your eye on that you think are doing a great job with their social platforms, and why do you feel like they're doing a great job? Christina, if we want to start with you.
Yeah, I'll give two examples. They're both consumer brands. The first is Aerie. It's the offshoot of American Eagle. I just love what they do on Instagram and TikTok. They have an amazing focus on co-creation with influencers. Their audience is a little bit of a younger demographic. So they're creating videos and they're getting photos from influencers of all body sizes, all super diverse content. And I think it's just really relatable and authentic. So I'd definitely follow Aerie if you're kind of looking for some inspo on what works well with a very human first social activation. And then second is, I love coffee of all kinds, but I know Paul loves coffee of all kinds too. But Starbucks, I think, kind of caught my eye last year. We know that Starbucks has super fans, and we know that Starbucks has super fans of their PSLs. I think they started marketing the pumpkin spice lattes earlier than any year prior, because everybody needs a little bit of fun and levity, and there's something just refreshing when it's PSL season. And they did a really cool activation with that integrated nicely with some other channels. They did this PSL personality quiz. I think I got it because they were doing a paid strategy and it showed up in my feed. Super easy, fun quiz, kind of showed off what kind of PSL lover I am. It was fun. I could share it to my feed, but then they turned that survey data into additional content. I don't know if they used it in PR, but I know it showed up in their Instagram newsfeed. And it was just a fun cross-channel execution that I think really stoked the fandom in a really fun way to be seen even more if they can be during PSL season.
Both fantastic examples.
Quiz too.
Yeah, did you? It was everywhere.
Let's see, I would answer this question through the lens, I saw a recent stat from Adobe that has stayed with me a bit, of where they said that 38% of consumers say that they're more likely to trust a brand when they see diversity in their ads and in their casting. And so that really sat with me. And really, when I went back to my feed and to understand the brands that I follow, there's something to that where I see, very inclusive representation across the board. And some handles that I'd call out is ASOS. If you look at their feed, it's a great mix of representation and really great product storytelling that feels authentic to whoever they're storytelling. This one snuck in last night, as I'm such a Suni Lee stan, and Suni Lee just launched a partnership with Pretty Little Things. And I think that's a great example of leveraging someone to create something that then is accessible to the community. Obviously, there's a lot of cost benefit analysis done, but I think they're a great example of as well of representation in their content. Gymshark was actually given to me as a brand to look at one of my earlier sort of interns through the brand lab. And I've always followed Gymshark because they have such a great grasp in their community, how they co-create. And the question earlier around professionally produced content and a mix of community sort of contributors, that's a great example there. And then I'd also say Glossier as well. I think they're an interesting brand because they would say, they unapologetically will say, like, yeah, we built a cult, and they leverage that cult to create their products and to have that feedback loop that actually was generating sort of their next portfolio of what they wanted to offer. So that's through the lens of diversity and what that means to the consumer and community. Those are a few that come to mind.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for sharing. We have about 10 minutes left, so we'll continue to go through a couple of questions, but if there is anything you'd specifically like Erin or Christina to answer, please feel free to drop them into the chat. So something that we discussed, over the past couple of years, clearly, a lot of the social platforms are looking to continually monetize. And so something that was shared at CES last week was social commerce is set to grow into a $1.2 trillion business by 2025. And Erin, this question is directed toward you, just given Noom's business model. Thoughts on how brands can effectively adapt e-commerce into their social platforms?
Yeah, that is such a loaded question. It's like unpacking a lot of things where, TikTok launches shopping, Instagram launches shopping, all these platforms are launching shopping. And the question is, well, what are we doing with it? How do we leverage it? And so I would say, if you are asking yourself that question, or if you are getting that question, I would say take a beat, take a breather, and then first and foremost, ask yourself, like, does it make sense for our business, right? If you're not necessarily selling something that is easily sold online, maybe it's not the best fit. But let's say, yes, okay, it does make sense for us. What is really, really key and sometimes overlooked is good housekeeping. When it comes to integrating sort of e-commerce into social, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen on the back end. Things like automated data feeds for your product portfolio. You want to make sure that that's, automated and updated, because it's not a great look, right? If you've convinced the consumer to purchase and they go to buy it and it's not available, right? Or it can't be shipped, things like that. So there's a lot of good housekeeping to be done if you want to embark on e-commerce. One other thing that comes to mind is make sure it integrates with whatever, again, your CRM sort of system is, right? Like if you offer specific benefits to maybe members or return customers, or maybe you have a credit card involved, benefits or points that way. Many of those benefits won't cross over into in-platform shopping like in Instagram. So your consumer may be used to purchasing something a certain way, and that's somewhat taken away in feed or in platform. So you want to do that due diligence to make sure that it upholds that same experience that you want. Third, I would say, even if you don't sell something on the regular online, it is a good example or a good opportunity to maybe test and learn from your community. If there are sort of capsule collections or one-off pieces of swag that perhaps you would like to see if your community wants it, or perhaps you want to leverage it as a community-driven sort of donation to purchase sort of example. There are ways that you can maybe test into what e-commerce means. But again, if you're going to embark on it, you can't stress enough the sort of importance of that good housekeeping. But Christine, to your point, where it's valued means that it's not going anywhere for these platforms. You see, integrated live shopping events on a TikTok or on an Instagram. And so knowing that the platforms are embedding it into their platform experiences means that having an e-commerce integrated strategy for social is important if it's right for your business.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing, Erin. And Erica, it's so nice to see you. Just saw your question. We had shared some consumer-facing brands that are doing great in the social space. Erin and Christina, are there any B2B brands that you think are particularly doing well when it comes to leveraging subject matter experts or content creators, UGC, et cetera?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind, this is stemming from my experience with home and design brands and my experience with Carmichael, is I would look at some of those sort of manufacturers that have curated and built communities around some of their products, but really a lot of their business comes from B2B. However, we do know in this day and age, the consumer may see something on social that then goes and asks sort of that expert or that professional of, do you know this product? Have you used this product? What do you think? So I like to lean on some of, the home and design brands that I love. I think about Marvin Windows, for example, or other sort of luxury products that I can't afford, but I love to sort of gawk at because they're sharing a lot of tips and tricks that are helpful to professionals. They're offering an expert opinion, things that are really tangible resources to their community, which I think is important for a B2B strategy. If you're embarking on that, I would really take some time to do research to think about, what are the needs of your channel? What sort of resources are they wanting from you as that sort of manufacturer, for example, or as that product expert? And I'd say lean into that because that's going to be sort of the most added value.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think what's fascinating for all brands, but even B2B brands specifically, is this concept of community. Is there a user group or super users of your brand that you can build a Facebook group for? How can you connect with them, to Erin's point, showing off your expertise? I think depending on the B2B brand, people are using it in different ways. So it really does come down to where is your audience and what's the type of content that's consumed on that channel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christina and Aaron. We have time for 2 more questions. So if we don't get to your question today, we can absolutely follow up afterward. It's so great to see all the want of information in this space. So Anisha brings up a good point, and Christina and Aaron, we spoke about this yesterday, is, over the past couple of years, there has been a lot of consumption of media, just given people have been spending more time at home. However, it's been noticed most recently, Aaron, I think you had mentioned yesterday, that boundaries is becoming a very popular thing for either companies or personally, that people are rallying around. So just knowing, what can brands do if there are signs of fatigue, of content consumption, out there. So I know we talked about a little bit of this, Christina, if you want to share, some thoughts there.
Yeah, I think as we head into this new year, the last almost 2 years has been really difficult for a lot of people. Quarantine saw TikTok and Instagram consumption increase. People are really looking for entertainment and a little bit of reprieve from the real world because it's difficult, right? So I think as social media marketers, we need to be thinking about not just how can our content cut through the clutter of a social media feed, but how can our content cut through the clutter of life? Is what we're putting out there helpful to our audiences? Is it giving a moment of entertainment, inspiration? Just really thinking through the utility of each post that you do put out there, each message that you put out there. But the reality is social media is a great place, but it can also be a really divisive place. And I don't know if that's going to be going away. I think people this year might continue to think, I don't need social media in my life. It's too much. And I think there will be people who might not want to use social as much, but really, I think we have a hard time unplugging. We love social media as consumers, and I really don't think it's going away. So I just would encourage all of you on this call to think through how can your social content be a voice for good or a moment of inspiration and excitement when your target consumer consumes it.
Absolutely. I think yesterday I just unofficially said boundaries is the word of 2022. And I'll sort of revisit that and hold me accountable in the DMs if you think that that's wrong. But, Anisha, that's a great point. And here's where, I think this goes back to the evolution of social, where I think early days when it's still continuing to grow. So not to say it's on the downswing, but I would say at one point we thought of social media and the different platforms as a destination, right? We sort of came to these platforms to ingest media, to sort of spend our time there and to give that our attention. So it's very much a destination. To your question around, with attention fatigue and attention going only to influencers or to other specific channels, that's where I would, task you to think about in your strategy, how do you think about social as a driver? What's nice is that you can think about social as a different utility to your cross-functional sort of teams, your cross-functional channels, because ultimately we want, that omni-channel presence, right? So when we think about the different ways that people are ingesting content, there's definitely an uptick in longer form video content, right? Or I'm seeing someone in here that's a blogger and that's their main source of sort of their business. And longer form, longer form text or copy content, audio content is certainly a new way of ingesting media. So how might you begin to think about social as a driver to the other places that you're curating and creating new content? And how is, again, there that feedback loop that they can think about, your social profiles as a place where they know they can get the latest and greatest, but it's also connected to some of the other great things that your business offers and curates and produces. And I would say your cross-functional teammates would also probably really appreciate you wanting to figure out, hey, how do we work together? How do we integrate? How do we make sure all of our channels are talking to each other? Because from a brand perspective, the consumer only sees that one brand.
So our final question, Aaron and Christina, you both have given us a lot of great tips and examples. What is the one thing you'd like for everyone on this call to remember from this workshop? Christina, we'll start with you.
The one thing, okay, I have like 10 things that I've jotted down in response to this question. So I will live on the spot choose one.
No pressure.
I would say always be learning. I think coming to webinars like this is great. Following brands like the brands we've mentioned is great, but always be testing new things in social media. You have the opportunity to post something and try something today, see the results instantaneously, and do it again or not. I think we will continue to have this platform for good and creativity, and just have fun with it, and always be learning from what you can control and what you can learn from others. We don't all have to reinvent the wheel. Someone has done it with success, and you can be inspired by that. Not steal it. We don't steal ideas. We're inspired by ideas in social media.
Ooh, that's a good one. And I feel like what I'm about to say is going to be in conflict, but the beauty is that they need to coexist.
This is good.
Because I would say it is so easy to feel like you need to be, always testing, always trying, always on. But if you're new to this, we have Christina here that's been in this space since Twitter was founded, and that sort of expertise takes time. And so I would say if you're new and if you're starting off, you might benefit from not trying to boil the ocean. Pick one channel, pick one strategy to connect with the consumers or your community, and see what's working. And then if something's not working, then move on to the next test. So it's not in direct conflict, because I always love that always learning, always testing. But I'd say do one test, focus on that test, have that sort of measurable outcome that will then lead to that next hypothesis that you have. Because I think you'll burn out if you try to boil the ocean. And so sort of start specific, start with clarity, and that's where you'll see results.
Hashtag boundaries. Erin, your goal of the year is
boundaries.
really resonating in the chat section.
I feel like we could continue speaking about this topic for at least another hour. But a huge thank you to both Erin and Christina. I can see people already thanking you both for your for the great points that you made today. And thank you all for everyone listening in. The Maccabee Agency's Sharper Angle series will be held monthly, and we will be sharing more information about our next workshop with you all soon. Until then, make sure to check out Maccabee's YouTube channel for previous Sharper Angle sessions about topics ranging from influencer marketing, content creation, and more. We'd also love to hear from you about your feedback from today's event. So please feel free to share it with us when we send you the follow-up information. Once again, thank you to everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.